Brian, I know it's hard for people to believe that have never met you and they know what kind of crowd you associate with here at the Experience and the Cornette shows and the Arcadian Vanguard, but you're a responsible, reasonable adult.
I think so. I mean, I've been called that.
Not by anybody in your immediate social circle, but people at first glance, when you walk down the street, you think, well, yeah, I guess he's a responsible guy.
I have everyone fooled. That's really what it is.
But I know that I sometimes tend to attract controversy, possibly even cause feelings to be inflamed and elicit blowback responses from the social media crowd, etc. I know that sometimes, they take me the wrong way. I'm usually such a demure fella, and I don't like to just come out and knock people.
Never.
But you've seen the controversy, you've heard about it, or seen it, one or the other, with Scotty to Hottie. Everybody remembers Scott Garland is his name, and I'm not reading his FBI file because everybody knows his Twitter handle was @TheScottGarland. But Scotty to Hottie was a WWF superstar back during the Attitude Era. He and Brian Christopher were too cool. And Rikishi later on was in that group. Scotty has had a long career. He started out in the independents up in the Northeast. He's from Maine, I think, my God, originally. And then after that, he worked steadily until a few years ago. I mean, he's slowed down, as we all have, by choice. But he's worked independents for years and always been a well-thought-of guy in the locker room. I can tell you, nicer guy you couldn't find, no bad habits. Doesn't, fuck with people, never gets in trouble, is always a pleasant person. And I believe, I can't quote you chapter and verse on his, a personal life right now, but I believe I've heard in the past that he has successfully transitioned to other fields of endeavor in his full-time private life besides wrestling, that now he does that on occasion. So the point is, he's a family guy. Lucky there's a family guy. And he doesn't even look like Peter Griffin, but he's not from Quahog either.
I don't think so.
The point I'm making is that here's a guy that has never been a lightning rod of controversy and doesn't go out of his way to knock or disrespect anybody, but he sent a tweet out that I thought, if you're going to express an opinion on Twitter, is probably the most non-inflammable or non-flammable. What is it, flammable or inflammable? It shouldn't piss anybody off about as much as any tweet that you could possibly send out expressing an opinion. And you've seen this, Brian, and I'm going to read it out loud. And I want you to give, as a level-headed adult human being, your reaction and or whether you believe that people should have goddamn, because the bottom line of this whole thing, where I'm going, is people had such a mental breakdown over this one tweet that they hounded poor Scotty to Hottie off of Twitter, to where he just said, well, fuck, it's not worth dealing with this shit, and deleted his shit. And here is how he fucking said such inflammatory things. Dear promoters, I do not fight, in quotation marks, women. I'm 49 and have a 20-year-old daughter. Hurting, in quotation marks, women isn't appealing to me. I understand that there are men that do it these days. It's just not my thing. If that makes me older out of touch, I'll take it. Please stop trying to book it.
Simple as that.
Yeah, apparently he has had some of these, I used the words of Dennis Condrey one time, some of these so-called promoters, that the best thing they can figure out for a guy that's worked in the WWE and been seen during the Attitude Era by more people than most everybody else these days, and you're going to bring in as a special attraction, should wrestle a woman. Brian Solomon, your thoughts, and then I'll piss the rest of everybody off.
Right, because you did have a very measured response, I think, to what he had to say. But you know what it is? It's the Twitter effect. That's what I like to call it, because I mean, I did not find anything inflammatory, I think that's the word you were looking for, about what Scotty said. I found it to be, not everybody shares that opinion. He's perfectly entitled to it. He did it in a very respectful way. And I think it's one of those things where because I've had this happen to me, where you get a thought or an opinion in your head and you think better maybe of sharing it on Twitter because you're just imagining the kind of exhausting response you're going to get. I think, I don't know if you, Jim, have that problem. I think
I don't have that problem. But I generally tweet exactly what I think, and if anybody disagrees with me, I fucking block them.
But I've had it happen where I've had a thought pop into my head, even on this topic, as a matter of fact. And I thought, you know what? I have a lot to do today, and I don't think I could deal with the responses I'm going to be getting to this. So I just keep it to myself. I mean, I tend to, and this is where I'm going to drop, like I told you, about 1,000 Twitter followers because I didn't tweet about it. But I tend to sort of agree with him. I see where he's coming from. I see where you're coming from. It's partly, I think I agree with both of you. It's partly the visual. I find the visual really bothers me. Although I think, once in a while it could work. Like I think it worked with China. I think it could potentially work with somebody like Rhea Ripley if done sparingly. But generally, it's a visual that's really weird, like having somebody like Tessa Blanchard bumping for, or rather Brian Cage bumping and selling for Tessa Blanchard in Impact, which is just insane. And then it's also because it takes you out of the match. I mean, I think even if people don't agree with that opinion, I think it's a valid opinion. And sometimes when I share that and I say, a woman wrestling a man, it kind of takes me out of it. People will say, well, what about when they have, a tiny little cruiserweight wrestling a heavyweight? I mean, everybody's okay with that. And I go, well, not everybody's okay with that. I think that looks pretty weird too. And it takes me out of it again, unless it's done sparingly, because it emphasizes the unreality of what you're watching. Because here's the deal.
Yes.
That they would never book an intergender boxing match. Never. They would never book an intergender MMA match because it's real. They're going to kill each other. Now you watch it and you're watching an intergender wrestling match. Now that's something that people would book. And what's the reason for that? The reason for that is they're not actually fighting each other. So that is the thought that's in my head while I'm watching it. And even though I know they're not fighting each other, I like to sort of suspend my disbelief, and it makes it hard to do that. That's all.
Yeah, and that's exactly the part of the problem. In order to satisfy the modern generation of pro wrestlers' fascination on everyone getting to be equal as performers, they are telling everyone that they are performing, which makes everybody look even worse. Then you have the distasteful aspect of, okay, how far do you take? I mean, the garbage wrestlers and the deathmatch crowd, they have women in these death matches. And, again, I thought the guys were walking fucking bloodborne infections. I can't imagine the women. But in any kind of legitimate business, or much less a mainstream promotion or anything like the WWE, even if you do intergender combat, you have to draw the line somewhere, or somebody's going to run you out of business. And if you're doing it, you're a niche product to begin with. But that's the problem, is because they think, well, we're going to show everybody that the women are equal as performers. Of course they are, you stupid fucks. Of course they are, you stupid. As performers, but not as fighters. And again, you get the Ronda Rousey argument. Well, Ronda Rousey could kick your ass. Yes, of course you could. And also, I put Baby Doll over, and she wasn't Ronda Rousey. But that's the pecking order in wrestling. The manager can put the fucking girl over, because before everybody in the world lost their minds, it was a goddamn insult if a guy got beat in a fight of any kind by a girl. And so that's the idea. But when you're talking about people that are purported to be, whether they are or not, in real life is not in question, where they are purported to be trained professional athletes, professional wrestlers, professional whatever, then I'm sorry. The fucking guy's going to beat the girl. And that's not my opinion. That's biology, anatomy, physiognomy, and science.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, sparingly, I think it could potentially work. Like when you had China beating up these guys, for the most part.
Don't put the finger on me. Not when they had.
Oh,
China.
I didn't mean you.
Well,
as in you.
Some people would take it,
right?
Literally. But I understand again. But here's the thing.
But it looked okay to me. I didn't mind it as much. I wouldn't mind it if you have Rhea Ripley. I don't know. I can't think of wrestling Ricochet. Let's say. I could completely buy that she could beat him. You know what I mean?
Well, and I would too. And that's another problem we've got is that there are men wrestlers now small enough that a good-sized female wrestler, it looks visually like they could whip, but we'll litigate that another time. But then you go into what I was getting into before, where's the limit? Okay, you could have a strictly scientific wrestling match with Rhea Ripley versus Ricochet. And I'm not talking about modern scientific wrestling where they consider the Hurricane Rana part of the science. I'm talking about if you had them wrestle and nobody's punching and nobody's striking and nobody's kicking. A wrestling match, you could get away with having that on WWE television if you built it right.
Yes.
And violate their man on woman violence rule, because then it would be a straight athletic contest. But the first time that Ricochet balls his fist up and punches Rhea Ripley in the face, they're going to lose 25% of their sponsors. Well, that might fly in fucking AEW because they can say, go fuck yourself and pussy and I don't know, fucking nun in the ear, whatever they say on TBS.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say.
I think I heard one of them say, I'm going to go fuck a nun in the ear.
I don't know. I mean,
we're going to the break. Somebody may have missed it.
Yeah. Well,
but they might get away with that on AEW on TBS. But then, we got away with the guy punching the girl in the face. Well, what about if we get away with, and then they're going to fucking get juice and they've already got juice with the girls on TBS. But I'm talking about a guy getting it on a girl. Then they lose some of their sponsors or get kicked off TV. Whatever the case, where is the line? And is it a movable line depending on the platform you have? Let's say Impact is completely invisible. Nobody, even the immediate families don't see that shit. So can they go out there and just have a full-on fucking street fight match where the guy's hitting the girl over the head with chairs and whatever? Because if it's all a performance and everybody's equal, it just doesn't make sense to open that whole can of peas. It makes the business look phony. It reminds everybody watching it. And yes, I've said in the past that like a Sherry Martel or a really hot female valet, Tammy Sunny, when she was Tammy in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, she took a few bumps, nothing major because she was a 120-pound girl. We didn't want to write her off TV for 3 months being in an iron lung. But, the heel girl that deserves to get bumped in the end, even if it's by a guy, if you do the old deal where you turn her over your knee and spank her, then the crowd loved it, but you weren't giving a pile driver to a 120-pound girl. Or right. if you did some, let's say, fucking body slam, well, nobody really uses a full scoop slam in a domestic violence situation. Not that I don't know. Speak for yourself. Well, I know it's been your go-to move, Solomon, but that's, so you can get away with things like that. But when you actually have the whole competition, like I said, I'm just going to say that it brings, and that's what I said on Twitter. I said, Well, now that y'all have run Scotty too Hottie off of fucking Twitter with your bullshit, nicest guy around, how about that? Fuck his reason. How about this? Because it makes it look phony. And if you don't like that, kiss my fucking ass. You ain't going to run me off Twitter. The whole thing might collapse anyway. I don't give a shit.
I think that was a very measured. That was a very measured response, I think.
I measured it. It measured about 4 lines. That's all it took me to tell all these people to go piss up a fucking rope.
Well, it's weird to me because it seems to be an opinion that you're just not allowed to have. You know, it's one of these unspoken things, and it's fine if people have different opinions on it, but the fact that you can't even entertain the opinion that somebody might, you know, have an issue with this. I think the bigger problem, I understand where the concern's coming from, which is, you know, in wrestling, the nature of the way the business is, most of the highest profile levels of competition are men's matches. So for women wrestlers, it seems like it's a benefit to get in on that because now you're mixing it up with the men and you're able to, you know, kind of maybe work at a higher level on the card or whatever. But I think the solution.
That's the problem is you mix it up with the men and it drags the men down to your level. After a woman fucking is competitive with a man,
right?
Then how can you push that guy is going to beat Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar or, you know, Gunther or, you know, pick the fucking star.
Oh, I didn't say it made sense. I just think that that's the thinking behind it. But I think the solution to me is instead of mixing everyone together, just, you know, lift up the female part of the competition, the women's division, which they have been doing in the past few years more than ever before in the history of the business. Give them more to do, you know, find the women wrestlers that are really talented and good, a lot of which we've been seeing, and spotlight them, but against each other. I think that's perfectly fine. Just lift up the division more instead of saying, well, we just have to have everybody wrestle everybody. You know,
but here with to Scotty's point, the WWE wasn't calling him, AEW wasn't calling him to book him on a steady basis. It's these, as I said, so-called promoters, wannabe promoters, these indie. The last several years that I did any kind of wrestling events, I would have to ask ahead of time when they were, whoever it was trying to be, even people I knew, I'd ask Court Bauer, hey, the Invisible Man isn't going to get booked on the show, is he? Nobody's going to break down into a dancing routine. There's going to be no slow motion fucking spots or whatever. And you know, unfortunately, now that anybody can do this, both in the ring and outside of it, you have these promoters say, oh, this is a great thing. People will get a hoot out of it. And if you, like you said, if you express the opinion, well, no, this is fucking goofy and here's why, then, oh, you're horrible. You don't believe in equality. No, I don't. I don't on the other side either. No, I don't believe that a trained professional female athlete can beat a trained professional male athlete in a wrestling contest, or should. But I also don't think that guys can fucking do get a perfect 10 like Nadia Comaneci. Or who was the oh, help me. The girl that got kneecapped, old Nancy Kerrigan.
Oh yes, Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan.
Okay, right. put a goddamn 250-pound wrestler out on skates I try to do Nancy Kerrigan's routine, see what'll fucking happen. Where none of us are equal. Males are not equal and females are not equal, and nobody's exactly the same, so nobody's equal. But in just science and biology and nature, there are certain things that don't fucking fit, and that's one of them. So, and then there's the unsavory aspect of, you know, what are you doing to this fucking woman? And what kind of liberties are you going to take with somebody that's obviously going to be smaller than you? And you see these indie shows where they're throwing these girls around like fucking Samsonites, and they're so happy. Oh, I got to be a part of this. Yeah, you almost got to be paralyzed. You won't lead a normal life for the rest of your life because somebody in a barn wanted to throw you like a shot put and you got a kick out of it.
Right. I think it's a world of difference between, let's say a woman wrestler who is just jacked up and you look at her and you go, wow, that is one intimidating looking wrestler in there with a man, which I could understand doing once in a while. It's a very different thing from having a woman who is in the ring with a man who is of a much larger build, much more muscular, much more intimidating looking. To me, and even that's what was part of Scotty's point, it's a little bit disturbing. And I think it's okay to share that opinion.
And he's got a daughter that's 20 years old. He doesn't want to be on tape or on video around the world beating up some random girl wrestler.
It's one of those things, if you showed it to somebody who didn't watch wrestling, and I know this shouldn't always be the barometer, but if you showed it to somebody who didn't watch wrestling, knew nothing about wrestling, they would go, well, this is an atrocity. What am I watching? Is this a crime being committed?
Well, and the only time I've seen a man versus woman match and felt sorry for the man was anybody that had to work with Nicole Bass. Otherwise than that, oh boy. And that was just because of her, not necessarily her size and strength, but the fluidity of her work. I took a body slam from Nicole Bass one time at one of the early developmental shows up in Massachusetts when Dr. Tom and Dory Funk Jr. were still training guys in the studio up there. And okay, we showed her beforehand how to pick me up and, more importantly, how to turn me over and put me down, not on my head. But I swear to God, she picks me up. Woo! I go up, down, nice slam, boom, got it. And I look down at my chest. And you remember, some of the older listeners may remember in the 80s, they had the I ran into Tammy Faye at the mall t-shirts about Tammy Faye Baker, where it was like you smushed her incredibly thick, overdone makeup and boom. And that was what my chest and the front of my suit jacket looked like. Her whole face rubbed off on me as she put me down.
Wow. Yeah, I think Stan Lane wore that shirt on a promo once. I remember seeing that time. I bumped into Tammy Faye t-shirt.
Yes, he did. He stole that from me, as a matter of fact.
Ah, okay. Good
but anyway, but nevertheless, I just wanted to register my support. Free Scotty to Hottie if he ever even decides to get back on, because he's a grown adult, 49-year-old man. I think he can survive without Twitter, but if he gets back on it, I think everybody should show him their support for being honest and polite and normal, everyone. But it's the internet, Solomon. It's the internet out there, and sometimes it's the internet service providers. You've been listening to the programs. Me and Brian we've done investigative reporting on this, and we have discovered that many of these major internet service providers across the country, they have stationed employees that live in the walls of your home. And that's really? Sometimes you hear the voices late at night. They're whispering to each other because they can't just be one, because they'd get lonesome. And also, one's got to sleep, and they're keeping an eye on you 24 hours a day. That's what our friends at ExpressVPN say. The internet service providers are keeping track of you 24 hours a day. So while one's in there sleeping, the other one's got his ear to the fucking other side of the wall.
I didn't know it worked that way.
Hear. Huh?
I didn't know it worked that way. I don't think I've ever actually heard anybody in the walls of my home. I think if you're hearing that, then you really have bigger.
Well, you should have been keeping up with me and Brian. We've been discussing this for weeks. I mentioned to him, that's why whenever they come to service something, that's why I won't let those Spectrum people in my house. Whenever they come to service something, 2 of them show up, but only one of them leaves. They wait until you turn your back and one of them secretes himself in the walls of your home. Because that's where is your computer plugged into? It's plugged into the wall.
Right.
And that's where they're keeping an eye on what you're doing. They're spying on you 24 hours a day. And every once in a while, like I said, you can hear them whispering because they got to fucking stay busy and talk to each other every once in a while. But normally, they're just listening to what you're doing. And that's how that all of your internet service providers know how to violate your privacy by telling you not only what you can and can't watch, but trying to send you advertisements for things and make a sucker out of you because they're keeping, and let's face it, sometimes just for purely investigative reporting, for research, for background, potentially for a tell-all book to blow the lid off of a serious industry, sometimes you've got to go on the internet and watch Dumbo Does It Donkey Style 74 times.
I don't know about that. Not me.
Well, you've got to take notes, and there's so much going on that you miss it the first time around. But now you don't want everybody to know you're doing that because they won't understand you were trying to do it to benefit society on behalf of the Association for the Prevention of Cruelty to Donkeys and Asses.
See, you're using that word "you" again now, and I know you didn't like it when I was saying that you were booking China.
It's the royal you, is what I'm saying. So, and did you know also, Solomon Grundy, did you know that the internet service providers are keeping you from seeing thousands of programs that are only available outside of the United States? And because you're inside the United States, well, you're just fucked. And as what we talked to the network, the WWE network that still apparently functions for our friends around the world, but not for us here in this country that have to be burdened by the Cox service. And nobody wants to be burdened by the Cox service when you can see the network. So what ExpressVPN, what they do to counteract this discrimination that we're all suffering is it's like they give you a secret identity, but it's not your identity. It's your location. They're going to send you somewhere in the world to where you can get all the things on the internet that you're entitled to. Because the internet service provider won't know that you're in Teterboro or Secaucus. They'll think you're in Yugoslavia or the Republic of Chad. Wherever the fuck you want to be, ExpressVPN will come to your house, bundle up you and your computer, and ship you over there. And that way you'll be able to see everything that you want to see on your computer. They let you choose from over 90 different countries. Every time you run out of stuff to watch, just fire up the app on your laptop or your smart TV. Or if you're like me, you have the electrician come in and just wire up a wall switch that you can flip. And you can switch your country and hit connect. And then you refresh the page and get a brand new selection of shows. Not just on the Netflix, not just on the network, on all that stuff. Let's say you like using it to watch. Oh, my God. BBC also stands for the British Broadcasting Corporation, doesn't it?
As far as I know, that's the only thing it stands for, Jim. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right,
well, if it's only available in the UK, because I think they got that other stuff, it's available around the world, But nevertheless, there's a reason why ExpressVPN is the #1 rated VPN provider by publishers like Tech Radar, The Verge, FBI's Most Wanted. Most importantly, most importantly, you, the consumer. And so anyway, folks, what you got to do right now to start getting to a different country and loving it is go to expressvpn.com/JCE. Right now, you get 3 extra months of service for free. expressvpn.com/JCE, and you can learn more about all this. But that's a thing. They got you pinpointed, Solomon.
Yeah, but
they know exactly where you are. You got to switch this thing up. Wild card, bitches. Don't let these people know where you are. They could drop a bomb on you like the Gap Band. Switch your location up. Be scurrying here and there, with to and fro, hither and yon, right?
I guess. I mean, I just want to clarify one thing you said is they're not shipping you off to any other countries, right? I mean, you get to do this in the comfort of your own home. You're not actually
so they're just going to take your computer then.
They're taking your computer to a foreign country.
How else would your computer show up as being in Russia or in the Czech Republic or in the Congo or on the Isle of Malta or wherever the fuck? You can choose from over 90 different countries. I thought you got a free trip along with it.
So the Isle of Malta, then I guess you're saying that even Baron Mikkel Cicluna would be eligible for this VPN service.
Yes, if he was still alive today.
If he was alive. Yes.
If he was alive today, he'd be eligible. And some of you folks out there, check your pulse. If you're alive today, you are eligible for this fine service at expressvpn.com/JCE.